Photographs can eternalize a moment forever, and in some cases, they unravel such unsettling mysteries that the human mind can't fathom it. Throughout our civilization, people have discovered shocking photographs of the life before us. Historians are always excited to investigate such pictorial evidence, but sometimes even years of investigation have left many questions unanswered. Before revealing the photo that captures something shocking, we will take a closer look at a series of mysterious photographs. Number 20. Asbestos. The photos of asbestos are not the rarest find, but its lethal properties have made it a silent and secret killer of the past. Asbestos's fire-resistant properties made it a crucial material across numerous industries, including construction, automotive, chemical, power, and manufacturing sectors. Plus, the mighty United States military relied heavily on asbestos for fire prevention within each branch, aiming to shield personnel from potential hazards. Ironically, while intended to ensure worker safety, it became known early on that asbestos exposure led to serious health issues, yet manufacturers continued to promote its use. Efforts to handle asbestos safely have persisted, but it remains hazardous, causing severe diseases such as asbestosis, mesothelioma, and lung cancer. The large-scale manufacturing of asbestos began to take off in the late 1800s, fueled by the Industrial Revolution, which helped create consistent demand for asbestos across a wide range of applications. As asbestos mining and processing surged, so did the harmful health impacts on miners, factory workers, and anyone in contact with the material. Yet there was a time in history when asbestos's benefits outweighed its harms. Asbestos's resistance to heat, chemicals, water, and electricity made it ideal for insulating steam engines, boilers, turbines, ovens, and generators that drove the Industrial Revolution. Its flexibility also made it essential in construction and strengthening materials. By the early 1900s, global asbestos production had soared to over 30,000 tons each year. Women and children joined the asbestos workforce, handling, carding, and spinning the fibers, while men primarily worked the mines. By the late 1970s, industrialized nations began to cut back on asbestos use as people grew more aware of the severe lung diseases linked to its exposure. Unions and labor organizations pushed for safer workplaces, and lawsuits against leading asbestos manufacturers led many companies to explore and produce alternative materials. As of 2003, environmental regulations and public pressure resulted in partial or full asbestos bans across 17 countries, including the United Kingdom. Number 19. Life-sized polar bears. In a different story of fascination and intrigue, a peculiar series of vintage photographs capturing men in polar bear costumes posing with the public in Germany emerged between the First World War and the 1960s. These images, now part of a unique collection titled Teddy Bear, were assembled by publisher and art collector Jean-Marie Donat. His inspiration came after stumbling upon an old photograph of a man dressed as a polar bear, which he kept for 15 years without much thought until finding a second, then a third, similar image. Realizing a pattern, Donat began actively collecting these quirky photos of men in polar bear suits, seen posing on beaches, alongside strangers, and even with soldiers. This bizarre trend began in the early 1920s when the Berlin Zoo first displayed polar bears, drawing visitors from across Germany who wanted mementos of their visit. Soon, enterprising individuals crafted polar bear suits, offering paid photo opportunities with strangers. Despite the clunky, odd-looking designs of these early costumes, The business gained surprising popularity, and well, the times after the Great War were tough. So, whoever got the time to dress up as a polar bear or a large-sized doll was earning some pennies to buy bread and butter. Now, onto a story of resilience. Number 18. A unique prisoner of war. You might have seen tragic photos of soldiers lining up in front of their enemies after losing a war. Yet this photograph is far from usual. After all, who would have expected a dog to make it to the Directory of Prisoners of War in Japan? Judy's story began somewhere near Shanghai, China, where she first met the crew of the Royal Navy gunship Her Majesty's Ship Nat. The sailors on board instantly fell for her playfulness and decided to keep her, taking the time to train her. Before long, they discovered her sharp instincts. Judy would bark whenever she saw enemy ships in the distance, giving the crew a precious early warning. It wasn't long before Judy was transferred to Her Majesty's ship Grasshopper. Yet soon after she came on board, disaster struck. The Grasshopper was torpedoed by the Japanese, forcing the entire crew to escape to a nearby island. It was on that deserted island that Judy became the crew's lifeline. She led them to fresh water, helping them stay alive in conditions that could have easily broken their spirits. Eventually, though, the Japanese forces caught up to them, and Judy and her crewmates were captured, becoming prisoners of war. Even in captivity, Judy never stopped watching over her crew. She would bark at the guards, trying to protect the soldiers whenever they were punished, bravely standing up for her friends and even taking some of the beatings herself. Thanks to British soldier Frank Williams, Judy made history as the only dog to be officially registered as a prisoner of war. In 1941, the prisoners, Judy included, were being moved to Singapore when their ship was attacked along the way. Amidst the chaos, Williams was separated and sent to another prison, but Judy managed to escape with a few other soldiers. She didn't just run for herself, though. Judy went as far as pulling soldiers to shore, once again helping to save lives. Later, Judy and Williams crossed paths once again when he saw her one day in the camp. From that moment on, she stayed by his side, offering companionship in an otherwise brutal environment. Their bond became an anchor for him, keeping his spirits up through the bleakest days. By the end of the war, they were freed together and finally made their way back to Great Britain. Once home, Judy was rightfully celebrated as a hero, receiving the People's Dispensary for Sick Animals Dickin Medal for her bravery and service during those tough years. She spent the rest of her life with Williams, a true friend. Number 17. Victorian-Era bathing machines. In Georgian and Victorian times, a beach day for women was anything but carefree and spontaneous. Instead of freely playing in the waves, they followed strict bathing etiquette to ensure they maintained the era's modesty standards, especially when it came to swimwear. To help women keep up appearances, the era introduced a clever solution: the bathing machine. This unique contraption was essentially a small, two-door wooden box set on 4 wheels, allowing women to change into their bathing suits and move across the beach without any risk of being seen in what was deemed improper attire by the opposite sex. Even Queen Victoria had her own luxurious bathing machine, complete with a personal dipper, a female attendant, to help her navigate the waves discreetly. Bathing machines first appeared around 1750, a time when skinny dipping was common since swimwear didn't yet exist. But even after modest bathing suits became the norm, these bathing machines remained essential, especially for the buttoned-up Victorians who held tightly to their standards of modesty. Number 16. Kowloon Walled City. Hong Kong may be known for its lightning-speed urban growth today, but there's a part of its history that was once far darker, hidden in the tightly packed corridors of what was called Kowloon Walled City. This massive complex held over 350 buildings, most of them standing between 10 and 14 stories tall. Packed into this space were more than 33,000 residents, crammed into over 10,000 households and about 8,500 tiny apartments. The city's buildings were stacked so close together that they almost seemed like one massive structure, a mix of architecture and something strangely alive. No two buildings looked alike, and materials were wildly inconsistent. You'd find cast-iron balconies squeezed up next to brick walls, concrete additions, and surfaces tangled with wires. Thick bundles of cables ran from the ground up to rooftop antennas or stretched across buildings. Walking into Kowloon Walled City meant stepping out of the sunlight and navigating hundreds of narrow alleys, some no more than a few feet wide. Some pathways ducked under buildings, while others were created by heaps of garbage tossed onto netting strung between the towers. Everywhere you looked, pipes ran along walls and ceilings, most of them corroded and constantly dripping. Many residents would carry umbrellas to shield themselves, not from rain, but from the endless leaks above. Kowloon, brimming with people, had also become the crime center of Hong Kong. From the opium trade to brothels, the complex was the dangerous embodiment of reckless crimes. In 1993, the government began to demolish the city to build the Kowloon Park we know today. Number 15. Omnibuses. You might still be interested in taking a tour in the red double-decker buses in London, but their grandeur is nothing compared to the horse-drawn buses that once roamed the city. While very laborious, the buses solved a major transportation problem in the industrial hub of England. George Shillabeer, a coach builder and stable owner, was intrigued by the transportation changes he saw in the 1820s. Inspired by what he'd seen in Paris, he launched a new kind of bus service in London in July 1829, running from Paddington to the Bank of England. Unlike stagecoaches, his buses followed a strict schedule, didn't need reservations, and allowed people to hop on and off along the route, with conductors collecting fares. His idea was a hit, but competition soon caught up. While Shillabeer's large 20-seat coaches required 3 horses, competitors used smaller 2-horse coaches, pushing him out of business. By 1832, London had 400 horse-drawn buses, and operators began coordinating routes and colours. In 1856, the London General Omnibus Company entered the market, quickly taking over. By 1860, they transported 40 million passengers annually, and in 1899, they began trials with steam and petrol-powered buses. Number 14. The Cannes Rebel. It is not uncommon for actresses to give a glimpse of their lingerie on red carpets anymore, but there was a time when that particular look was frowned upon until the Rebel of Cannes changed everything. Brigitte Bardot made a splash at the 6th International Cannes Film Festival in 1953, promoting her film Manina, la fille sans voiles, known as The Girl in the Bikini. At just 18 years old, she stirred up a controversy when she posed for photos on the beach in a tropical print bikini. Sailors gathered along the boardwalk to catch a glimpse of the star, while one bewildered woman, dressed in a coat, tights, and an ankle-length skirt, looked on in disbelief. This was all part of Bardot's clever strategy to promote the film. So, the young actress posed in her bikini on every beach along the southern coast of France. This phenomenon was seismic. Throughout the 50s and the 60s, we saw the rise of the mainstream swimsuit as we see it today. Number 13. Hidden Mother Portraits. We've all come across those adorable portraits of little kids nestled on cozy blankets, surrounded by fluffy pillows. This popular look traces back to a practical need from the Victorian era. In the early days of photography, long exposure times made it tricky to capture fidgety children, so someone had to hold them still. The beautifully arranged fabrics and cushions helped conceal the mother's supportive arms and laps, which kept the kids comfortable. These hidden mothers can be easily overlooked in the photos, but once you spot them, it's hard to ignore the outlines of the adults tucked beneath the fancy textiles. It's surprising how we might not have noticed before that those little ones were resting right on their mum's lap all along. Number 12. Luxurious airplane travel. Today, airplane food is bland at its best, and an economy seat will give you the back pain of a lifetime. As air travel became more and more accessible, the luxury of an airbound flight also deteriorated. There was a time when passengers were wined and dined like royals, and today, you'll be lucky to get a plastic cup of orange juice. Photographs from the 50s tell us about the downfall of luxurious airplane travel. In the mid-20th century, first-class travelers on Pan American Airlines were treated to gourmet meals that could easily compete with those found in the finest Parisian restaurants. To elevate the dining experience, the airline teamed up with Maxim's, a renowned Parisian eatery, to create exquisite multi-course meals exclusively for its first-class guests. The menus proudly displayed Maxim's logo, and well, Pan American was putting money where its mouth was. Similarly, the seats, padded with the finest leather, made long air travel very comfortable. British Overseas Airways Corporation even introduced hammocks for babies, but they were later removed due to safety concerns. Number 11. World's Most Dangerous Toy. The Gilbert U-238 Atomic Energy Lab was a genuine radioactive toy and educational kit sold in the early 1950s. Priced at $49.50, the set included 4 samples of uranium-bearing ores, autumnite, torbanite, uraninite, and carnotite, along with a Geiger-Muller radiation counter and a variety of other tools. To make it even more appealing, the set featured a comic book starring Dagwood from the beloved Blondie comic strip. Titled Learn How Dagwood Splits the Atom, the comic was created in collaboration with General Leslie Groves, the director of the Manhattan Project. From the very start, the toy was unpopular for various reasons. As you might have guessed, the price tag was very hefty for middle-income families in America, and then with real uranium samples inside, the kit was a safety hazard too. The pacifist organizations in the country criticized the toy for pulling kids towards war and destruction, and well, it was downhill from there. While the U-238 Atomic Energy Lab continued to appear in newspaper advertisements in 1952 and 1953, this was mainly due to stores trying to sell off old stock at discounted prices. By 1952, the Gilbert Toys American Flyer Trains catalog had phased out the U-238 Atomic Energy Lab in favor of the number 11 Gilbert Chemistry Atomic Energy Set. Number 10. Phone booth stuffing. In the late 1950s, a really awkward trend took off. Somewhere, someone glanced at a phone booth and wondered just how many people could squeeze into one. The rules of the fad were simple. People get stuffed inside an enclosed phone booth until there is no space available, or there are no more individuals left to be squeezed inside. This bizarre game went global, with America and South Africa competing for the title of phone booth stuffing champions. It all began when students in Durban, South Africa, claimed the world record by managing to fit 25 people inside. This achievement sparked a worldwide challenge, with students from various countries trying to beat the record. The main rule was that at least half of a person had to be inside the booth to count. The closest anyone got was a group from St. Mary's College in California, which managed to fit 22 people. Interestingly, this strange competition caught the eye of photographers from Life magazine and even made a brief appearance in the credits of the television show Happy Days. Eventually, with the decline of enclosed phone booths, the trend lost its value among the youth too. Number 9. The unfortunate case of August Dieter. The horrors of Alzheimer's are housed in one heart-wrenching photograph of August Dieter. The most severe case of dementia remains incurable to this date. The victims of this disease suffer from several symptoms like loss of memory, depression, mood swings, and more. The research on Alzheimer's has taken a productive route today, but that wasn't the case when August Dieter became the first known patient of the disease. Instead, she was called crazy and insane. August, who was born in 1850, began displaying symptoms of dementia at a surprisingly young age, just in her early 50s. Her experiences included memory loss, difficulty sleeping, and challenges with language and writing. Unfortunately, it was quite early for someone her age to exhibit such signs. After her husband could no longer provide the necessary care, she was admitted to the Institution for the Mentally Ill and Epileptics in Frankfurt, Germany, on November 25, 1901. It was there that she encountered Dr. Alois Alzheimer, a German psychiatrist and neuropathologist known for identifying Alzheimer's disease. Dr. Alzheimer became deeply intrigued by August's condition and asked her questions similar to those used today in the screening for the disease named after him. Much like others suffering from dementia, August struggled to recognize familiar objects, food, and even people. For instance, she mixed up her first name with her last and confused various lunch items, mistakenly thinking her pork and cauliflower was spinach, and that what she was chewing was potatoes and horseradish. By night, her speech became slurred, and she often awoke screaming in terror. In just 5 years at the institution, August experienced a significant decline in her cognitive abilities, ultimately passing away at the age of 55. After she died in 1906, Dr. Alzheimer reviewed her brain and medical history, discovering abnormal changes and significant atrophy in the cortex, the outer layer of the brain responsible for memory, language, judgment, and thought. Previously, such abnormalities had only been observed in patients in their 70s. August's case marked the beginning of a broader understanding of memory loss around the world. Number 8. Pets in the White House. While President Biden's cat Willow has become quite the celebrity in the White House, did you know that the tradition of presidential pets dates back to the year 1800? John Adams, the first president to reside in the White House, had 2 mixed-breed dogs named Juno and Satan. Although Adams did not stay in office for long, he lost his re-election bid. Later that same year, many dogs and cats have followed in their paw prints as first pets. However, if there's one pet that stands out in White House history, it's the beloved turkey of Tad Lincoln, the son of Abraham Lincoln. In 1863, 10-year-old Tad became attached to a turkey that had been sent to the White House for Thanksgiving dinner. He named the turkey Jack and treated him like a cherished pet. As Christmas approached, Tad realized that Jack was on the chopping block for the holiday feast. In a moment of desperation, the young boy burst into a cabinet meeting, tears streaming down his face, and begged his father to spare Jack from the executioner. This iconic story is often cited in recent presidential speeches as the origin of the modern tradition of pardoning a turkey during Thanksgiving. Number 7. Miniature patrol cars. If you see small, almost human-sized cars roaming around the bustling New York City, you'd probably have a laugh. While those cars might be perfect to drive on the sidewalks to escape the terrible traffic of the city, this means of transport is hardly handy. Yet there was a time when the New York Police Department used miniature patrol cars to get their jobs done. These cars were introduced back in 1955 and became insanely popular. In the past, the police department has even used horses to patrol around the city, but nothing came close to these miniature cars. The compact vehicles were specifically created for patrolling the 2 tunnels beneath the Hudson River. These tiny carts were only 60 centimeters wide and came with a swivel seat and a straightforward control button. The original models could zip along at speeds of up to 19 kilometers per hour, but the newer versions could take off, reaching speeds of 55 kilometers per hour. This one-of-a-kind transport system was in use until 2011. After that, the New York Police Department switched to more advanced surveillance technology. Number 6. Einstein's Desk. You might have seen several photographs of Albert Einstein on the internet, as well as your science textbook, but publications hardly feature the space where the genius spent most of his time: his tiny wooden desk in his office in Princeton. As soon as the news of Einstein's passing came out, several photographers made their way to Princeton to catch the last moments of the scientist in the world. Many remained unsuccessful in the venture, except for life photographer Ralph Morse, and what he captured was truly unique and shocking. Only Morse managed to slip into Einstein's office that day. He was the only one to walk away with a photograph that 60 years later stands as a stark reminder of both Einstein and his remarkable contributions. The photo captures a seemingly ordinary scene. Einstein's desk, messy with notebooks, journals, a pipe, and a tobacco tin. Behind the desk, a blackboard is filled with equations and formulas that to someone unfamiliar appear almost novel in their complexity. The desk, as you can see, was cluttered like always. Einstein, around his death, was working on several projects and research papers, so everything on his desk was an important piece of scientific discovery waiting to be unraveled. However, Morse, out of his respect for the Einstein family, didn't steer very close. He wanted to document Einstein's tragic passing, but remained courteous in doing so. His photographs of the office will, however, go down in history. Number 5. Delivery of soba noodles in Japan. As societies industrialize, food systems evolve and adapt to meet the demands of a growing customer base. These remarkable old photographs showcase Japan's dime, or delivery men, who expertly navigated crowded streets while balancing towering stacks of hot meals on their shoulders to satisfy the appetites of the masses. The tradition of food delivery began in the 17th century as a service for affluent daimyo, or feudal lords. Back then, these wealthy individuals would send their servants to inform shopkeepers of their food requests. Over time, food delivery became more accessible and affordable for the middle class. Delivering noodles required a unique technique to stack food high on their shoulders while biking through bustling streets. Soba, the popular buckwheat noodles, was one of the most common foods delivered this way, and you can best believe that these expert delivery men didn't drop a single ounce of the hot broth they were carrying. However, in March 1961, new cycling traffic laws were introduced, adding restrictions for safety reasons. Officials from the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department noted, "Riding a bicycle with piles of soba bowls on your shoulder is dangerous and should be prohibited for road traffic safety." Still, they were reluctant to impose strict limits since that would significantly reduce the delivery man's customer base. They went on to say, "With this assurance, the soba delivery boys will continue to race through the streets of Tokyo." Today, this traditional method of delivering soba is no longer practiced. Number 4. The Wonder of Lou Kulong. Nobody knows who took this photograph of Lou Kulong, but there's one thing for sure. If Kulong was around today, he would have been the clear-cut victor of No Shave November. Kowloon was born in France in 1826, and legend has it that he started growing facial hair when he was just 14 years old. By the time he turned 78, in 1904, his beard had grown to a shocking length of around 11 feet, or maybe even longer. Kowloon worked as a metallurgist in a factory dealing with cast iron, which raises some interesting questions about how he managed to keep such an enormous beard tidy in that kind of environment. Yet it wasn't just work that occupied his time. He had a knack for posing for postcards alongside his cats and family. Some of these whimsical postcards featured black cats peeking through his thick, grey beard. With his wild appearance, he resembled a grizzled wizard straight out of a J.R.R. Tolkien story, particularly Radagast the Brown. It makes us wonder, could Tolkien have come across postcards of Lou Kulong for inspiration when creating his character, known for being a lover of birds and nature? In the films, birds even made their nests in Radagast's beard. Number 3. Man behind Charlie Chaplin. Fedora, cane, and handy mustache. That was the iconic ensemble of the silent film star, Charlie Chaplin, who became famous for his comedic and goofy roles. Yet behind that comedic persona, no one really got to see the real Charlie Chaplin in his all-handsome glory. Yep, as the rare photographs of a young Chaplin reveal, he was a total heartthrob. He might as well be the Ryan Gosling of his time. This is why it is not a surprise that the popular actor was a total ladies' man, and in certain instances, his reputation preceded him. In his times, he was the ultimate crush of many teen girls, who instantly fell for his chiseled face and broody mood. Number 2. Air travel in the 1950s. There was a time when traveling in a plane was picturesque, and the aesthetic was completed by smoke in your hand. Today, it is unimaginable to smoke on a flight, but back in the day, it was almost a necessity for the rich. During World War II, cigarettes became incredibly popular. Advertisements from that era often showcased the idea of flying while smoking. Although smoking on airplanes was initially banned, cigarette companies got creative by handing out sample packs to passengers. After the war, the association between airlines and smoking really took off around the globe. By the 1950s, nearly all airlines allowed smoking and even offered complimentary cigarettes to travelers. Companies like Philip Morris routinely collaborated with airlines to give their brand a touch of luxury. The harmful practice of smoking on board was, of course, eliminated in the 80s and 90s. Number 1. Mary Ann Bevan. The last photograph on our list would remind you of the deepest levels of human depravity. In the early 1900s, British woman Mary Ann Bevan enjoyed a good life with her husband Thomas and their 4 children. However, her appearance began to change dramatically, developing severe deformities that made finding work impossible, especially after Thomas died of a stroke in 1914. Desperate for money, Mary saw an advertisement for a contest to find the ugliest woman in Britain. She entered and won, which led to a new career based on her unusual looks. The late 19th and early 20th centuries saw a rise in the popularity of showcasing individuals with unique appearances at fairs and circuses. Winning the contest attracted the attention of fair owners, who invited her to join their freak shows. Despite her embarrassment about her appearance, Mary seized this opportunity to earn a living and support her children, becoming a professional human curiosity in 1915. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.